Was it a whole hour?
Kia ora koutou. Kia ora koutou. He mihi ana kia koutou parawai kiko nei mo tēnei hui. Nā te mihi tino mihi atu kia koutou nā kanihira me ngā whānau katoa I runga I te hui tōpa. Nau mai hara mai. So welcome everybody. We've done council tour this morning, so we don't need to go through that process. But just a welcome to everybody that's around the table and everybody that's online and is going to be listening to this riveting hui. So welcome. That's my welcome. The second part of our is apologies. I'm going to call for apologies.
So Morn and Councillor Wong.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Morn and Councillor Wong that have put on the apologies today. And I'd just like to also make mention of a new appointment to the committee, which is Councillor Paul Sharland. So welcome, Councillor Sharland, into the Policy and Planning Committee. Public forum? Absolutely. Can we have a move and second for the apologies, please? Thank you, Dave. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
No public forum.
No public forum today, so we can move on from that. Everyone is very aware of the conflict of interest declaration, so if there's anything that you'd like to declare at this moment, do so, but otherwise we can just take that declaration as we get to whatever the issue might be. So confirmation of order of business. There's been no changes to that. Thank you, Carol. Move on. Confirmation of minutes. So the last Policy and Planning Committee meeting was held on the 20th of November. I was actually not, no, I wasn't part of that at that time, but I just want to acknowledge Councillor Duncan for chairing that meeting. And we're going to go through the minutes.
Sorry, in terms of going through the minutes, I would have put an apology on somewhere else. I'll just have to find out where.
Okay.
The apology was noted. It's on page 8.
Page 8, you and I were both noted in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, we're going to move into the minutes. Councillor Duncan, are you happy to do that, or you happy for me to just carry on?
Oh, absolutely, carry on, yeah.
Okay, so we'll get page 1 of those minutes. Any changes? There won't be any. Page 2, we get on to page 8, which is actually on the document. Anything on there that needs to be changed or amended? I wasn't at the meeting and nor was the mayor, so.
I'm happy to move as correct.
So this page 8.
Oh, sorry.
Page 9. Anything on there that needs to be updated? I feel like there's 2 of you in the room that were part of it. Oh no, this, sorry. Anything to change on page 9? Page 10? No, page 11? So can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duncan, and seconded for those set of minutes.
Second year.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All right, we're going to move on. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Kia ora. All right, we're going to move on to the Chair's report. All right, I'll read the report. Tēnā koutou katoa, he mahi mahana ki a koutou mō tēnei tau hau. He mahi aroha ki ngā whānau I te kapua pauri, haere atu rā I ngā mate ki tō moenga roa. Firstly, we acknowledge those whānau who have lost someone dear to them at this time. Our love goes out to the Turia whānau with the loss of their kuia, Dame Tariana, and also her mokopuna Pākoi Tore. We also acknowledge the many other mate across the dohi in this time frame. As we step out of Te Pō and into Te Ao Marama, we welcome in the new year and look forward to all the positive things that this brings. I'd like to welcome and acknowledge our newly appointed Chief Executive, Carol Gordon. Carol is no stranger to this council, and we are fortunate to have her in our corner. With the myriad of kaupapa she will be responsible for leading He Wahine Tō Ia. Our agenda is full this month. Our agenda is full this month with one of the key items of discussion being the prioritisation and next phase for our district plan review. We are currently in consultation mode around the TAB and gambling policy, which has already seen a good amount of community interest. We urge our community to put in their submissions. We will also be receiving a presentation around the dangerous and unsanitary building policy review by staff for consideration. In our business as usual space, an economic update will be provided, which covers town centre projects, Martin Market Day, and other updates on key projects. We will be receiving an update on climate change with an important climate resilience project that is being led by Horizons that covers our Scots Ferry community. The decision-making around the table that falls out of these hui helps feed into our monthly Rangitike District Council meetings. I had to stop to think recently about a whakaaro or a point of view that was given to me about the difference that elected councillors, politicians and local body and central government make. Personally, the entanglement of the bureaucracy that goes with being a councillor can be infuriating. However, how we work through issues, barriers and problems so that our thoughts are clearer, we can see solutions that enable us to move forward as a council for the betterment of our people. Anyone can sit on the sidelines and complain about what should happen in this space. And fortunately, you can make a difference by putting your hat in the ring to run in the upcoming local body elections in October. Kia kaha koutou. Whakatauki, whakatau tō wairua. Rapua tōrangi Māria I te ture kore. Calm your soul, find peace in the chaos. Nā mihi mahana piki te ora hiro chairman. I'd like to move my report, or has anybody got any questions? No. I'll have to move the report if someone can second, please. Kia ora, Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay, kia ora. Moving on to our next agenda item, reports for decisions. So we're looking at the dangerous and sanitary building policies. And we're going to hand this straight over.
Thank you. So the report here is to bring to you the draft dangerous, affected and sanitary building policy. So for context, we were required to review this policy. It was just due for review as it's been 5 years since the last one. But also, as I have mentioned before, we've had the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment also review the policy and make a number of changes. So we've incorporated those changes into a draft that we've presented to you, and yeah, happy to take any questions on it.
Questions?
Quick one for me, and you've noticed that it's been reviewed by HEMB. Was that at their request or your request of them? Or is that a standard policy to do?
By their request, checked by them. Thank you. Part of the audit.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Other questions? Councillor Duncan?
Right, one of the biggest things that sticks out is it used to be called dangerous and unsanitary buildings. So why have they popped in affected?
That might be better answered by someone else around here, but our policy did also include, if you read through the policy, it did say dangerous, affected and unsanitary buildings. We just include it in the title now.
And
as
was that a
well.
recommendation from you? This is,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you.
My only question I had, I've only briefly read this, but the council takes a passive approach to identification of buildings and actively responds to investigate the complaints. So we will be working on mainly on complaints received as opposed to hunting suspected unsanitary conditions down. Is that normally that's the normal go-to?
Pretty much a policy that's nationwide.
As a council, yeah, just wait till you've seen a rat in the takeaway shop and then you fancy.
And did you have a question?
Yeah, if you go to page 20, I agree with the rest of the report. and it is going out for consultation and effect. So that's the checkpoint system. But if you go to the bottom of page 20, I'd just like an explanation around the last sentence there. For affected buildings, inform the owners of the building only when restricting entry to the building. So is that saying that if you're wanting to enter the building, you need to inform the owner? Or is that saying if you're wanting to restrict entry to the building, you only have to inform the owner? And my point is, if it is about if you want to enter a building, that you must inform the owner, I believe it should be the property. I think first port of call is more than a courtesy that when somebody goes onto a property, they should make best endeavours to contact the property owner before, when accessing the rest of the property. So that if somebody, the way that I read this, that left it open that staff could just walk onto someone's property and walk around the property without trying to contact the owner of the property before doing so. There seem to be mixed messages in here.
Thank you. Have we got a response to that?
Yes, Madam Chair. So there's just two different concepts there. If we're looking at purely the policy, we're actually talking about, and Brian can correct me here, we're actually talking about notifying the person that owns the building as an affected building, whether people can enter their building or not. In terms of what your worship has just alluded to now, is in terms of our warrants, we are allowed to enter any property at any time building is taking place, and to inspect that property. It does not mean that you can enter a dwelling house, which is a person's privacy. So in terms of that, there is process and procedures. Most of the times where we have enough opportunity to forewarn the property owner, we will do so. Some of the times it is not possible, or the possibility that evidence may be removed. So it just depends on the situation, but we are warranted officers, and we exercise those warrants with due respect and caution.
Yeah, and I get that, and I fully understand there will be occasions when somebody could remove evidence and those sorts of things, and I understand the power of the warrant. And I'm used to that with IRD and tax and police and all those other matters. But I just wonder whether somewhere it should be reflected that where possible, that an endeavour is made, if it's a routine inspection, for example, that is non-urgent, that best endeavours should be made to contact the owner, or at least to check with their home before entering someone's personal space.
Any response? Or do you need some more time to think about it and potentially come back?
No, Madam Chair, as I said before, most of the times when officers do go out to properties, it's either by appointment or a specific inspection, whether that be a swimming pool inspection or a new building inspection or even a development. So most of the times, parties are more than aware that council officials are going to enter or be on the property. It's just those odd occasions that officers will go there unannounced.
Yeah, and I think you and I are on the same page here, but I just think that there could be a line saying that on most occasions, or the first endeavour is to inform where possible.
I think if we just change some wording and get around that, I think that would be fine.
Anything else to do with your?
I like the document. I have read through it all. So, and it's going out for consultation, so I'm happy. And I'm happy to move to consultation whenever you want somebody to move the motion.
Thank you. We've got another question from
Couple of
Councillor
questions.
Loudon.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around how this policy defines affected. What does sort of got dangerous affected in a sound tree? Where does it affected by what? Or affected?
It's in the definition. Yeah. You go back.
On this third page.
Page 18 at the top.
Sorry, I didn't read that.
Building that's next to or
Three
adjoining.
definitions.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Councillor
I'll find
Duffy,
it.
would you?
Oh, just a nitpick. Once again, nearby, I'm just concerned that nearby is not specific. Or is it? Is nearby specific enough?
Madam Chair, through you, that's in legislation. We can't change that wording. It's an assessment that you make.
Thank you.
Nearby for something that had an effect 200 metres, that's nearby. But nearby to something that's only 2 metres,
Yeah,
you're making a judgment call.
right, okay. That's not very specific.
No, it's a judgment call.
Okay.
Get your net knots.
Councillor Loudon, were you?
Yeah.
Sorry, were you happy with?
Yep, yep. I just had another question as well. If anybody, yeah, I just, the dance between Heritage New Zealand and the council regarding heritage listed buildings. And when a heritage listed building becomes dangerous, affected or insanitary, how does that play out? Who has the sort of the power in the relationship? If council deems it needs to be pulled down, for example, what happens in that space?
Thank you. Who was going to answer that question for us?
Now we're looking around the room.
I'll answer it.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think in an instance like that, it will be a court process, and it will be the decision of the court. Council usually, because you still got an owner of the property as well that's affected, so we don't have the right to just go onto a property and demolish it because we feel it's dangerous or we've stickered it as dangerous. There's still a process to follow, and it will be no different if it's a heritage building. There will be a court order that will give us that authority, is my understanding. I don't know if Brian has got a. Yeah, I think it's the only way it can be done.
Thank you. Anything
Yeah.
else to add into that? Thank you.
You'd know far better than me, but I thought under an emergency situation in terms of preservation of life and limb, essentially, the chief executive could order a destruction of a building rather than waiting for a court. He'd have to he or she would have to justify that action to the court at a subsequent day. So
I'm not 100% sure of that, but we can look into that and come back to
Thank you.
the committee.
Under section 41 of the Act.
I think it's the same powers that for instance, Fens have and police have. But I'll make it work.
9.1. That's it.
Or there's gonna be some clarity that comes back to us. So we're happy for that to come back to our next meeting, or if you're able to send that information out, that would be great.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll circulate it out.
Yes.
I'm just happy to second the mayor's recommendation that it be circulation. I believe that was a recommendation, but I do not know if a seconder was done, but I'm happy to second.
So is there any more questions, first of all, before we go to that bit? Has anyone else got any questions? Otherwise, we will move on to the recommendation 1, which was moved by the mayor and seconded by councillor Wilson. and that's the report be received. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Recommendation 2. That the Policy Planning Committee recommends the council that the draft dangerous affected and unsanitary policy is adopted for consultation with or without amendment.
Have been moved or you moved it from the chair.
I'm happy to move and I'm happy for you to be the seconder.
Yeah.
With,
Happy to
with,
second.
without or with?
Minor
Without.
amendment.
With minor.
With minor amendments, no.
Does that need removing?
Yes.
Yes, so they're going to put in with minor amendments. Okay, I've moved, councillor Wilson seconded, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Moving,
Chief Executive's just pointed out at the bottom of page 22, the council may, in other words, does have the authority under those conditions to remove the danger, and it would be covered.
I think that does make sense.
But- Sorry, I'll let you carry on.
what, so we're going to move into our next economic update. Okay. Welcome to the table.
Right, good afternoon, councillors. Well, I thought what I would do this time is just sort of take you through a couple of the highlights for this last, between now and the last economic update we had in November. There's a couple of things to just sort of highlight there, so I'll just sort of go section by section, and if you've got any questions as we go, please feel free to stop me.
Thank you.
I have just provided a link there through to the September quarterly economic update that we're providing. The next one is due to have the information released at the end of February. We anticipate having that out and ready for circulation sort of early to mid-March. It'll be out. A couple of things just to note from last quarters was that GDP was relatively flat for the district, but that was against a decline at a national level. So we are slightly ahead of what we're seeing in a double dip or triple dip recession, depending on which economist you listen to. Consumer spending for the district is down at 2.2%. What's really interesting with this is after you account for population growth, inflation, the real decline is closer to a 6% level, which is a figure that we're just going to be watching closely across the district. It's a real driver for the retail vibrancy and what's happening in our town centres. Vehicle registrations up for the first quarter since 2021, but we are still below kind of that 10-year average. Does sort of suggest there may be a little bit more discretionary money floating around on some of those big ticket spends, but probably too early to say that we've seen a turnaround. And then in regards to employment, the number of employed residents in the district reducing by 0.3%. At the same time, unemployment fell by 4.2 to 3.9. I guess that's a worrying indicator that the employment market is shrinking. And unemployment is shrinking. We're really seeing people exit the employment market from our district, not at a rate yet that we would sort of see concern, and is similar to what we're seeing nationally, but it does suggest that we are seeing people leave the employment market, potentially moving overseas, studying, or not actually seeking any support during that period of unemployment. And then
Can I just ask, would the mill have something to do with that?
Yes, it may. And when I say may, it's too difficult to be able to isolate an individual employment situation like that, because we have seen support in that space. If they haven't necessarily entered the unemployment market by getting unemployment support, or they're still through a period of redundancy, then that won't necessarily show up yet.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
It'll be fascinating to see what that looks like next quarter.
Yeah, Andy, did you have a question?
Things have changed quite rapidly, and the national rate of unemployment now is sitting at 5.1. And we were seeing that the latest figures that have been indicated to me is that our unemployment figures have risen along that line. So yeah, it's very volatile situation at the moment.
Okay.
Just a little bit there around the housing market. We're coming off a low base, but we are seeing the number of homes sold in the quarter are up, and house prices are coming back slowly. So a little bit of growth in that space. And anecdotal feedback at the moment suggests that we are starting to see a bit of a reversal, multiple offers on properties and things like that across the district. We are waiting eagerly for what the Reserve Bank are going to do with the OCR. Again, depends on which economist you speak to as to what the outcome of that will be. I've seen and heard a case made for 0.25 all the way through to 0.75. I think you'd be relatively well on the money if you went in the middle of that, but we'll find out next week when that happens. Inflation, I've just sort of captured a little bit of information there around what's happening at a national level. It's the tradables that are kind of, sorry, the non-tradables that are a little bit stubbornly high. So rates, insurance, rents, whereas the tradables primarily around that imported stuff is actually helping inflation come down. And then just make a little bit of a comment there around the Business After 5 events. So we had some really good events supported across the district at the back end of 2024. The first one of 2025 was really well attended. There are a couple of events coming up in the next couple of weeks, which you will have seen invitations come through to as well. One is an event in Taihape, which has been hosted by Business Rangitikei. There's also a breakfast that we're hosting in Bulls next week, just to discuss some of the challenges that the Bulls businesses and the retail sector there are experiencing. And then there's a Business After 5 being held in Martin at the back end of February as well. Any questions before we move on to?
Thank you.
We've just provided you with a bit of an update on the economic strategy. You have been involved through some stakeholder sort of events. We've received kind of some first initial information from Becca. What was really interesting is that in the period between starting and scoping the strategy and where we are now, government direction changed. So initially we were scoping an economic wellbeing strategy. Back to basics, kind of changed the game a little bit, which includes the reference of the 4 aspects of wellbeing, economic wellbeing being one of those. It's just taken us a little bit longer to work through that, but we are still working through the drafting and hope to have something through to you. I don't want to promise by the next committee meeting, but we'll be working towards that. Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, that program continues to perform at a very, very good level for our district. At the end of November, the program had 63 placements. I'm pleased to say I have the end of January results that have just come through this week. We're above 80. 45 are what we call sustainable, so eligible or as part of the requirements of that program.
It's fantastic.
The annual target is 39, so we're already ahead of, within our district, what's required for the full year. Yes.
Yeah, just some comments around Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. To put this in perspective, there are 37, I think it's 37 councils that are part of Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. And seven of those 37 have been paid out, I think, for second tranche. But if you take the stats on employment figures and you take the 2 top performers, and we are the top, but if you take the 2 top performers, ourselves and Wairapa, that accounts for 25% of their employment stats nationally. Now, you have to bear that in mind. We are not the only provider in this space. So MSD are finding jobs for people, etc. The success rate of our team is just exceptional.
I was also just going to make comment about the fact that we have had our second tranche received and then distributed onto the consultant. So the requirements of that, I guess, contract or agreement we've had have been met. And we're working towards our application for the 25-26 year, which will be completed at the end of this month.
Through you, Madam Chair, we've dropped into the second level of tranche funding for the country. So we were tier 1, we're now tier 2. I don't think that we can complain about that because we've had so much extra funding. But also the governors of the scheme are casting a very firm eye on those councils that are not performing, and we will claw back money. There will be extra money, I think, that comes back into the pot.
I have a question. Can you just remind me, are we doing a 2-year contract for those providers at the moment, or are we looking at a 1 year? 26, 27.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have agreed at our, I guess it must have been the November, maybe the December council. We're in a process at the moment of seeking renewal of that contract. I was instructed to offer it for 2 years, subject to external funding.
That's right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Just a bit of an update there around the work that's happening with regards to the Martin Streetscape design. So work is underway. The consultants that are helping with this work have completed a lot of the background work, surveys, identifying the activities of our town centres, sort of our strengths and weaknesses, reviewed the vehicle connections, town entrances, walkability, those sorts of things. There was a community event hosted at Market Day where there was some input provided from the public. A lot of surveys completed on a various number of topics. There's a workshop planned for the 6th of March, which is where the opportunity will be for elected members and then further stakeholders at separate sessions throughout that day to start to provide input into that work and help with the design. Just a reminder there that we do have a whole point. So once the stakeholder feedback has been collected and analysed, a master plan will be drafted. After the plan's been drafted, it will be brought back to council where you'll actually have the opportunity to advise the appropriate next steps.
Questions? Comments?
Is it in our calendar? 6th of March?
Yes, annual plan, which shows as an annual plan.
Just a little brief update around the town centre, Better Off funding updates. So we're chipping away at the rubbish bin refurbishment. I've just had confirmation this week that there's another 8 to be replaced in Bulls, which is going to leave us with the final, maybe 6 to be done there, which will give us some spare ones. The map is ready to be sent for printing, which is fantastic. And then we'll have that up at those 5 locations. And there is a mural that's going to begin in mid-February. I'm just waiting for a final start date on that, obviously weather dependent. And Taihape, the background work for the wayfinding map is well underway. Photos have been taken and everything's kind of been marked. It's going to be circulated around that working group, which includes elected members for the Northern Ward. We've started a planning meeting just around the picnic area at the Outback. And once that is completed, we'll get some quotes done and then start to understand what can be put in that space. And we're also working through some design work at the moment through the parks team, who are going to be looking towards some improvements around the gumboot and just making that more of a kind of placemaking spot, photos, a little bit safer, things like that. We've then got a bit of an update about Market Day. And what I want to do is just, we've got Kim here with us, who leads that event. So come up and you're welcome to come and talk through Market Day and share any of that. Yeah, so I mean, Market Day, we've sort of captured some of the insights there and Kim did a fantastic job of sort of collecting those insights. But Thought if there are any questions or any information that you would like off the back of Market Day, just having Kim in the room and available to answer those questions would be useful.
Questions, comments? Well, I've got a comment. It would be just thinking about how this type of success can somehow be replicated or in Taihape. Over the years, they've had things, but I would say not for a very long time. So how's that been in Taihape, that lead, that it would be great to see something to this extent happen. That's just, I'm just commenting, but just a congratulations to everyone. That's awesome. Excellent. That's awesome.
Yeah, could I just say, Market Day is something that I've had quite a bit of involvement in over many, many years in various different forms, from pretty much when it first started as a very, very low, small scale event, really only outside a few shops. And I think one of the keys here, and it's very much a big thank you to Kim and for having and the council bringing Kim on board, a fresh set of eyes to have a look at what's always been done and to change it. And I can say for a couple of things there that Kim has changed the way people looked at Market Day and what it needs to be. And sometimes when you have organisations that are largely run by volunteers and you continue to do things the same way, it's also you get the same results. But a fresh set of eyes having a look at it and go, we could change this and you could change that. And I think with Kim's input, that has been very, very successful in actually just having a look at the way that you did it. That was set in place pretty much last year as well. But I think we've seen the fruits of that work come through to what was an incredibly successful Market Day this year. And one of the ones that I would say one of the best. So with your comment regarding Taihape, I would suggest you take advantage of Kim's schools up there to have a look at what's been done in the past with a fresh set of eyes, and particularly her skill set, and looking at it would be quite valuable. I would think you should use that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Oh, I was just going to comment that this looks pretty, I didn't go, but this looks kind of impressive. These must have bumped your figures up, Jared. I mean, look, the best trading day ever, 25 to 59 increased spending on the day. It's just pretty impressive figures for,
Excellent.
you know.
If I may just respond to that as well, having had the opportunity to walk the businesses in early January to just test how Christmas was, the anecdotal feedback from the businesses who are in the main part of the street and actually just in Martin and January were extremely positive. Some of them talking about their best trading day they've ever had. One business suggests that they potentially had about 2,500 people through their shop on the day.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Kim, have you got anything to add into this report, please?
Just that I think it was really worthwhile getting actual figures on it. It's really easy to say, you know, there's this many people that were there and spending was up, but to actually be able to quantify it with figures, I think was a really worthwhile exercise. And it gives us a starting point as well if we wanted to look at doing it again in a couple of years to benchmark how it's going.
Yeah, excellent. Councillor
Look,
Levin?
what I like is in the past, there's been the old grumble from local businesses that they've missed out on Market Day and all the people that come into the area with their stalls do all the business, and seeing 52% of local businesses saw an increase in spending was quite a nice figure to see. So I think it's a very worthwhile process you're going through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Osler?
Further to Councillor Loudon's comment, that again is a part of taking a fresh look at the way Market Day interacts with the local business and the setup of the stalls and things, which has led to that. So I think that's also quite a key fresh look at how it's been done to enable it to happen.
Excellent. Andy, have you got anything to?
No, it's all been said, hugely successful. And feedback from everyone was fantastic. a real thank you to the service clubs, Rotary Lions, JCs, etc., that man this as well. So the absolute community effort.
Something, do you have anything further to say? No?
No.
All right, thank you. Go back to your report. Gerard.
And just finally, I thought I would take the opportunity to review with you the Shop Local campaign that ran through October, November and December. Nearly 1,750 complying entries, 87 businesses had an entry against them, or at least one entry. I think one business had nearly 300 entries against it. Mostly positive feedback. There are some learnings there, obviously. The first time we tried to do something like this, entering was easy. The businesses didn't have to do a huge amount for it. It was mostly put on consumers. Businesses were grateful for the efforts that were made. The shopping bags as a little extra were also really well received. So overall, we're going to sort of mark it as a success. Delivered the positive outcomes that we were looking for, and that change of sentiment around thinking local before taking your spending out of town, and continuing to drive that narrative in the new year has been really important as well. So it's intended we'll run another one in 25 and try and take on some of that feedback, but primarily with the same intent.
I think Jill was first. Do you want to go?
Oh, no, no, sorry.
The question's been asked to me, the shopping bags, did shopping bags get distributed to Hunterville and Bunting? Good, I'll pass that on. Hunterville was saying, we didn't see any, I thought that was the case. But yeah, there were a few learning curves, you're aware of those, right?
Thank you.
Predominantly positive.
Oh, and I was just going to say the shopping bags, what did they have on them? Just
It was just consistent. That may have been, I'd have to check to confirm, like making this place home and our core fight.
oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking like, you could put like I shop in the Rangitikei or something on that, and if you do that, you get a free something or other. You go, so we could just to tweak it a bit,
Councillor Duncan, did you have a question? Did you have a comment?
Oh, no, sorry, I had a comment. Feedback to me was predominantly positive. So just to support what you were saying. Yeah, and wasn't I happy?
Well, thank you for that report, Gerard. Can I have a mover that the report be received? Thank you, councillor Lambert. Seconder, thank you, councillor Loudon. All those in favour say aye.
He's not on that.
Oh,
How rude of you not to be.
I actually have got my
Just
phone.
to observe
Councillor
it.
Duncan.
Thank you.
All those in favour say aye. Kia ora. Thank you, Gerard. Moving on to our climate change, Kezia. You can take us through this. Thank you, Kezia.
Hi all. I just wanted to highlight that we had the climate action working group with staff yesterday, and we only got through one of the items that were listed in the report. 2 of them will be for the next meeting. It turns out that there's so much going on in the space that it took about 2 hours just to do the round table of what everybody's been up to and how we can all support each other. So fantastic news, but there's a few things that probably aren't correct in this report now. Otherwise, I'll take the report as read, and any questions I'll be happy to answer.
Questions, please?
I'm Kezia, just the Resilience Explorer pilot project, and that relates to Scott's Ferry. We've been doing some work on a tractor that pumps over. Should we be taking this into account, or when would the effects of this be coming back?
So the pilot project is really just a GIS mapping tool. And one of the things that we can do is include it in the narrative of the project. So one of the things that the community will be able to see on the mapping tool is all the narrative that is staff and is the contractors all input. And so one of the things we can include is that narrative around the tractor.
So I think that'll give an idea as to whether it's the whole area that floods as well. And perhaps the impact is not the pumping out is happening over all of the farmland rather than just down on the road.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. That will be really interesting to that project.
Well, we have discussed with the Horizon staff, Trina and I, about that specifically. And have flagged that as well.
New identity does.
Just with regards to, through your chair, if I may, the question of Scott's Ferry, the only thing I picked up on that, is there any comms need to go out to people of Scott's Ferry to say there's work being done in their space? I mean, does it need to be communicated in some way, or is it really just business as usual stuff? It doesn't need to have any comms.
Well, it's an Horizons project, so presumably they would be running some comms on it, but we can check for that anyway.
Councillor Blackie.
It's not within the report, Kezia, but in the commercial zone report, they've talked about the Tutanui Stream as being a flood issue for zoning within Martin, and that issue there. Is your group working with Horizons to promote work on the Tutanui Stream to try and mitigate the flooding issues within its catchment?
There is a flooding risk assessment happening, my understanding. I'm not too sure if that's included.
Yeah, I can probably provide some comment. There's a couple of things in that flood modelling space. Horizons is leading a regional project focused on flood modelling throughout the region. That's in the very early stages. I'm aware we got a little bit of comms about it just before Christmas and are awaiting further comms. So we'll engage with that quite actively as that progresses. The second one is the piece of work that was part of a Better Off project that Mr. Bernardi is leading, that's focused around the Tutanui catchment. I don't personally have the details on where that one's at, but we can always provide that later on.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
I'm just wondering, with this pilot, so the pilot project's scheduled to go live in March, you said it's a GIS modelling.
Yes.
And are we expecting to get results from that? Are we put through Horizons at some stage?
You'll get results probably from me. I don't know. The results will be just software, and it will hopefully be live on Horizon's website page, I expect. And then you'll be able to see all the different layers and what that means. So it won't just be flooding, it will also include things such as the sea level rise and connections as well for electricity and that sort of area.
Okay.
So it is just a pilot project, so we aren't 100% sure what it's going to look like for both sites. But hopefully it will be really great once it's available.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had asked previously that we consider climate change when we are making going into new contracts, etc. And it is starting to become routinely noted in our reports. But I'd be interested to know from the assets team that I'll leave to chair of assets to talk to assets about, in terms of our roading contract, was the climate position any part of that contract consideration, which is becoming common. So for instance, with Palmerston North City, in terms of roading going out to contractors, they said, you know, how are there any adaptation processes, whether it's electric vehicles or whatever, as part of your contract? I'd just be interested if this is starting to flow in terms to procurement practice.
Any comments?
I'm not expecting you to have an answer on this, but I'm just signaling.
I know exactly what His Worship is referring to, as it comes out of some previous work the council did, was the fact that that is a consideration as one of our attributes towards council contracts. So I'm not aware if it has been taken into consideration as part of ongoing contracts, but I can certainly find that information out.
So it flows through to our council procurement policy in terms of vehicles, but it should be flowing through in terms of council procurement contracts.
One question for me, and I don't want to take up too much of the committee's time, but it seems to me that this policy kind of overlaps a little bit into our early discussions around district plans. So there's an overlap there, but there's also an overlap that comes into, Johan, in your area with regards to building consents and water retention and holdbacks with regards to flows to the Tutanui stream, and in fact you've got to have tanks and hold back the water. So there's a terminology that I can't think of what the word's for to that flow into the stream. So are these things all being looked at collectively as one to form part of your total climate strategy? Or are they all, because they're all interlinked somewhere along the line. And if you're going to have a strategy and an action plan, an action that's been taken on the regulatory side to restrict your flow and your holdbacks, along with anything else that you're doing, they should be overlapped or linked to. So is that the case with this, or are they all in isolation to each other?
My response would probably be that the action plan and strategy probably didn't overlap because they're quite different priorities. I'd say that we're looking at more at the greenhouse gas emissions, whereas I assume planning's a little bit slightly different, but there is overlap in that they all need to be considered, the implications.
Perhaps overlap's not quite the right word, but I mean linked to would be, or interactive too, because it all forms part of what council could say is its overall climate change strategy, because each department has lots of these different things. So how they link together, and I think your answer probably just tidied that up.
And probably to add to that, one of the areas that KZ has been working on is upskilling staff across the organisation as well, and trying to keep on top of all of the different projects and aspects that do have a climate focus to feed them into that climate change narrative. So one of them is upskilling when as staff we're writing the section in your reports around climate impact. So that's a slow process, and KZ is working across the council with solid waste. She obviously sits in with us with planning, so he's a lot about that. So yeah, it's a work in progress, but the intention is that all of those kind of interconnectedness are known and considered for the climate change aspect of them.
Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, just thinking about what the mayor said before about procurement policies and what have you. I just wonder if what you're talking about is more sort of social engineering and that putting pressure on other people to be climate sensitive. Whereas when we talked about in Zone 3, we talked about being climate change aware, it was more about the materials we use in our projects that should be climate sensitive. So I'm just wondering how far councils go with, and I know big business actually, you know, they have a lens on social engineering in effect, but from a council perspective, is that our role, or is it simply our role to show that we are watching our own climate footprint in what we use to do what our job? So we should be looking perhaps at electric vehicles within our organisation. We should be looking at climate sensitive materials, as in building materials and the way we make concrete. I don't know, that's a biggie, but whatever, do you know what I mean? Whereas, is it our role necessarily to put pressure on other organisations, especially if it's going to be a cost to be climate sensitive? Do you know what I mean? So, you know, where does our responsibility lie as a small council?
I think it's both. So what you're doing is looking for a step change in activity across the sector. And if we can at least highlight it as a consideration without putting a huge weighting on it, but highlight it as a consideration. For instance, there are conversations in New Zealand at the moment in roading, for instance, around the relative merits of moving away from asphalt to concrete roading. And there are arguments that over long term, concrete roading is cheaper. But probably the even greater arguments is in terms of concrete's ability in the climate change area. A fascinating read, if I can highlight it to you. I won't go into it all now, but that's been discussed at national levels.
Yeah, national levels.
And where we can influence a change in perception, you know, where we could directly influence, for example, and say, we don't want, you know, plastic packaging. We don't want plastic bags being the process of packaging within our towns. You know, we could be quite proactive in that space if we wanted to be.
Thank you.
Just, I think the consideration that we should be giving, if we come back to the question about our procurement, is if we were going to a market to get a substantial amount of work done in a building or something like that, if one of the agencies that we were discussing it with, or perhaps tenderers or people who had given us an expression of interest, I'd be really interested to know if one of the processes in their building was going to produce a whole lot of plastic. I'd really want to know that they had a recycling service that they used and promoted to use it rather than sticking it to landfill. But I'd like to know that information as part of my consideration as the attributes to the suitability to work with council for a job. So I guess that's what the procurement process refers to when you're thinking about your the climate change mitigation that a company we may use can help in us in procuring a service. So that's more along the lines I think about what should be considered in our procurement process.
I think it comes up more often than you tend to think. For instance, in our swimming pools, we use gas burners. And the decision of whether you use gas burners or whether you use other processes to heat buildings or design a building so that it requires less heating
Absolutely agree with that.
becomes part of the whole climate change position. And so that's why it's important and have it as listed as a consideration.
Can I answer that? And I actually totally agree with that because that directly will be counted as part of our footprint. And that's where I think we should be involved.
Any other thoughts around this discussion? No? Thank you, Kezia. We're going to go down and there is no, this is just the.
Move receipt.
Yes. It's moved by councillor Wilson, seconded by councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kezia. Strategy 9.3 strategies plans update.
Right, I'll take you through the report. I'll take the report as read, but there are a couple of areas to highlight and a couple of new aspects that aren't in the report to highlight as well, due to timing. So in terms of the strategy plan reviews that are underway, the list is there. There's two I wanted to draw your attention to. The first is just to note that there is a recommendation there about the efficiency and effectiveness monitoring report for the commercial zone. But we really covered that in the workshop earlier. What that is effectively, we'll put that up on our website as we've done the reporting as required by the RMA. The other one is just a short update about the Bulls Parks planning project, noting that it's commenced. We've got iwi engagement planned and community consultation tentatively planned for March this year. So I did also visit the Bulls Community Committee meeting that they had in January. So that project is underway and will progress pretty quickly once we have that community engagement day. The other things that I did want to raise in this report, and usually you would get them as a separate report from me, but unfortunately they didn't come out from the government on time, is a note that the coalition government has released their Q1 action plan that is actually already on the Big Tin Can hub for you. So just wanted to focus your attention to a few of the areas in there that have a particular interest for us as council. The first one is that the government's going to launch their 2025 economic growth plan, which will be really interesting. There's an action there around taking cabinet decisions on Building Act changes for granny flats and small structures. Another one is taking cabinet decisions on the major legislative architecture for government's replacement of the RMA. So that will be a really big one for us as well. And then there's a few others that will impact our communities, but not so much us as an organisation, which focus on freshwater management as well. So we'll have that out to you so you can have a look at all of the actions. There's 22 actions under the Rebuild Economy heading, which is mostly where we find the changes relevant to local government. And then the second area is that the government has proactively released a report that went to one of their committees that is all about the back to basics type approach from the government. So I'll connect you in with that report as well. What we're expecting is legislation out in the middle of the year, with legislation enacted closely following the local government elections at the end of the year. So watch this space for more work coming out in that area.
Any questions?
Have you any understanding what back to basics means or entails?
I'll link you into the report. Effectively, what they're saying in the report is redrafting the purpose of local government back to the focus on infrastructure, what it was when National was in power the last time. I don't have the exact words in front of me. So that's one of the aspects of that. There is an aspect around rates kind of capping. They've said that there's another report due to go to government committee in early this year that's going to give more details on that and what that exactly means. And this report specifically, there's like 2 paragraphs or 2 sentences on what that might mean as well. This report also talks about the benchmarking that they're aiming to have in place by the middle of this year, which has details around rates and debt measures like that. So it's quite an interesting read. It's 21 pages, but yeah.
Just in addition to that, so the purpose for local government, they've actually included the wording around supporting local economic growth and development, which is slightly less restrictive than we thought they were going to come out with. So that's positive, but we're still yet to work through all the detail of what it actually means for us as council.
It is an interesting read, and you're quite right. The government is highlighting the need for economic growth and development. And if we can't grow this district, essentially we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I have my own views around strategically what this district needs, and that's certainly there. But the other things that reverting back to basics, you know, we have absolute needs in our district for health provision. We have education needs to be a focus for our district. We are in some of these sectors, we're in trouble. And employment, economic growth and employment tend to go hand in hand, which is easy, but.
Any other comments, questions? No?
No more nice to have.
That's the message from government.
Okay, well, recommendation 1, can I have a mover please for that the report be received? Thank you. Councillor Duncan, seconder please. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye. Carried. The second recommendation that the Policy Planning Committee receive the efficiency and effectiveness monitoring for the commercial zone, and note it will be made available on council's website as part of meeting requirements under section 35 brackets 2A of the Resource Management Act 1991. Moved by Councillor Lambert, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right. Carried.
Yeah, do feel that was in the
Yes, very happy to carry on. Well, I'm happy to carry on. Thank you, Jenna. Right. Policy and bylaw work program update. And Jenna, you're taking us through this. Thank you very much.
So you'll see that the policy and bylaw register are both attached to my report. The 2 things of note is that we're currently consulting on our gambling venue and TAB venue policy. Consultation will close in about 10 days, and additional policy planning meeting has been scheduled for March for the hearing of the submissions for that one. The other thing to note is that we're currently working on the water related services bylaw. I'll have a report to you at the next the April policy planning meeting, to take you through that to meet the legislative requirements. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, councillor Wilson.
Just noted one, which I thought was, I'm just trying to find it here, it is here. Last reviewed, it's the disposal of surplus land and buildings, last reviewed 2015 priority high. Review to begin when staff are available.
Yeah, so that's one that has been identified by this committee as one that needs to be reviewed, and staff are also wish to review it. They just don't currently have capacity to do that, which is why we've put it down there. But I guess if your direction is that you consider it to be.
No, so no, it wasn't that, it's just that I note in here that it's high, and high would mean there's a degree of urgency about it. But on the other hand, we're saying we can't do it because we haven't got the staff. So has somebody reviewed what the degree of urgency is within that policy? And is there something that we do need to review in the light that we may or may not be considering disposing of some property at some stage in the future? Wondering where that's at.
Same staff person is the one that's involved in a lot of critical stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Mm.
We have talked about some alternatives to get some of those on, and they'll be coming before you, because you've got to remember some of our assets will be transferring to CCO, and whether there's some surplus around there. So there's a whole nother layer that goes on that Jana hasn't even.
I mean, if it's high but has no risk, then I'm quite happy. But the high does high bring risk with it.
Well, it's a risk with benefits if you went through it and decided what to. Whether it's a risk, it can stay there, but there are benefits that go with it. Certainly some risk attaches to the ones that will be transferring.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you're on the same bus, aren't you?
What a surprise.
Any other questions or comments, please? No?
Just one.
Thank you.
Just the Mokai Bungee. I see that it, I mean, it hasn't really been on, an issue. I'm just wondering when these things can drop off.
So sometime last year, I can't remember when, there was an update in one of my reports to say that once it's been overdue for review by 2 years, it's automatically revoked. So we're just waiting for that 2-year deadline to hit, which will be in April.
Awesome, and then we can just drop it off.
Yeah.
Thank you, because my memory tells me that we have definitely talked about that. Yeah. Thank you, councillor Duncan. Anyone else got anything that they'd like to bring up? No? Oh, well, okay then. We've got a recommendation that the report be received, policy and bylaw work program update be received. A mover, please. Thank you, councillor Duncan. Thank you. Has moved, and councillor Lambert has seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Well, that actually brings us to the end of our hui. And before I close our meeting, I'd like to go around the room and to see if anyone's got anything else to say. Our new CEO, thank you.
Thank you. You probably have all seen the email I sent out about the appointment of Katrina as my replacement. So, just acknowledging that today, because Katrina will then be sort of in this hot seat and a lot of the policy planning, which she has already been doing quite well over the last year or so, really pleased that we're able to make that appointment.
I'm very glad. We're going to come back to you. Kezia, anything to add, Kezia? Thank you.
No, nothing to me other than welcome to Councillor Shalin to the committee.
Nothing from me.
Oh, I just enjoyed being here today, being extra. Thank you.
Can I just say that by the time it gets around here, you may not be an extra and you may rightly be on. Johan.
Nothing from me further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Except I want to apologise to Carol, because she didn't get a chance to mahi at last night's Taihape Community Board meeting. And actually it was Councillor Wong that said we should have given you a chance to give your bio. So, but yes, welcome again. It's a great meeting.
Councillor Wilson.
Only to recroach your words, Chair. calm your soul and find peace in the chaos.
Hilda.
Oh, no, just to say, yeah, once again, it's the engine of the council's policy and planning. It's a pleasure to be on this and congratulate staff for all the work they've done. This has been, I've had a chance to skim read them all. And of course, Katrina, looking forward to seeing her move up a chair. And, yeah, no, it's, onwards and upwards for the council. It's good. It's in a good place, the council.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to this new workshop. So it's interesting just to hear another part of how the council works. So looking forward to it.
Kia ora, Councillor Sharon. Your worship.
Yeah, I'm sort of mulling through my mind. There's a whole body of work that I can see coming up, and I'm not sure where it quite fits, but I think it probably fits in terms of policy and planning. If we move into a regional relationship with Wanganui Ruapehu, and that comes with it in terms of CCOs and so on, and setting up other bodies, but it also comes in terms of what's the word, regional. It's not,
Regional deals.
thinking of the word. Shared services, sorry. Not shared services or? No, it's where we appeal to government and go on their list for regional growth. I've forgotten the word.
Growth fund.
Yeah, but I think that we have to start thinking about how that relationship works, and because we are seeing a split across horizons, and what bodies of work we will need to do and think about in terms of those relationships. It's just a whole, just going through my mind, how do we plan this? How do we structure it?
Thank you, Your Worship.
No, I've got nothing. Thank you.
Well, I've got a couple of things to say. First of all, I'd like to mahi to you, Kevin, for the input that you've had into our council over the last couple of years. I've enjoyed working alongside you and appreciate all of the gifts that you've brought to us. And you've told us that this will be your last meeting in our policy and planning space, but actually you will be stepping out of our council at the end of this month. So I just want to wish you well, and I'm sure that's the same thing that everyone wishes you well. In the third time of trying to retire. But it's been really really awesome to work alongside you, and I thank you very much. So, in saying that, the other thing I'd like to say is I regularly talk to somebody else about Councillor Charlene coming on board, and without really making it sit in my head that Councillor Loudon, you've been to a number of these meetings, and I would just like to put it to, I don't know if I can do this now, but at some stage, just where I feel it would be fantastic if you were able to come on and be part of this committee as well.
Thank you, but when I first started a council, policy and planning was the last thing I wanted to be involved with. But I've actually quite enjoyed it. You do get to know what goes on.
Just before you close, the word I was looking for was the regional deals.
Regional deals.
Because regional deals will become part of, and I think it sits within this grouping. But how I incorporate it or how council deals with it, a deal, I'm not sure.
We will, there's going to be another thing for us to tackle in the future. And I'm sure you will be leading us in that. So in regards to what I've just said with Councillor Loudon, maybe if I've just said what I think, but maybe in our next TUI, if it's around the full council table, or even if the mayor's able to do it now, if you want it.
I mean, if you want to be part of it,
I'm happy to come along, yes.
We'll do the same as we've done with Paul, we'll just appoint.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, ngā te mihi, tino mihi, aroha kia koutou katoa mō tō whakaro I puta, mō tō aroha hoki. Just to thank everybody again for contributions to this meeting. And to thank you again, Kevin, for the work you've done. And I'm going to close our hui with karakia. He inui tātou, kia tātou katoa. Te atawhau tō tātou araki a ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, Te Wairua Tapu, Moaki, Ake, Aminet.
I mean,
Amen.
thank you. No, thank you.